Contributors Nolan Finley of the Detroit News and Stephen Henderson of the Detroit Free Press. Gentlemen, how are you this week?
We're good.
There's been a lot going on this week, a lot of headlines kind of coming fast and furious. I think we have to start in Washington. Nolan came charging into the set today.
Well, I hardly charged.
I think he came charging into the set.
I got a bad knee. I can't charge. I limped on.
All right, so he wasn't moving so fast, but very interesting, I think, what has happened during the weekend. We were all talking before the show about action in Washington and really being mystified about the inaction, and now the attacks on President Trump from his own party is what piqued a lot of the interest on your part, Nolan.
Well, and the president's attacks on his own party. I mean, you see a real coming. The friction in Washington now is all between Republicans. I can't remember when the last time was the president tweeted out an attack on a Democratic senator, a Democratic congressman. It's all been Bob Corker. Before that, Jeff Flake. And the Corker thing this week is really interesting because this is a guy who has some influence in the Senate, considerable influence. I mean, he's head of the Foreign Relations Committee, a very mainstream establishment conservatives. This is not a rhino, to use the ridiculous term the Tea Party has coined. And they're just in an open war, insults going on. And now this morning, Ben Sasse stepped up and asked in an interview, he asked, is the president going to recant his oath of office now that he has failed to defend and protect the Constitution, the First Amendment of the Constitution? That was in that rambling speech or comments he made yesterday, in which he said we might want to revoke NBC's operating license and start investigating the press. And you got a lot of people within that party who are starting to say, we can't take this anymore.
What do you make of the action or the inaction here?
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting that it's happening so early in this administration. This is an administration that's, what, 10 months old now, and already you have this kind of warring among Republicans. I mean, this guy gets elected, he has majorities in both houses.
Yeah, isn't this
Congress.
Supposed to be the perfect scenario for them to get things done and to advance the Republican agenda?
On paper, it looks that way, but I can remember back in November and December, people saying, well, don't be so sure because nobody knows what this guy will be like as president. No one knows if he will be able to construct an agenda, and he's made himself pretty transparent. You know, I never know what to quite make of what he's doing. So the thing he said yesterday about NBC is in response to what he thinks is really bad coverage of his administration since he's been in office. And yet he used to work for that network. And while he was doing that, he was leading the campaign against Barack Obama based on the idea that he wasn't born in this country. I mean, a patent lie that he spent a lot of time and a lot of money spreading all over the country. Does he not in any way, I mean, there's no way he's unaware of that kind of hypocrisy. So is he doing this for some other reason? He can't be serious. I mean, he can't possibly be serious.
Or is it just attack? Because any kind of personal affront on him, he's going to go back.
He didn't think NBC should lose his license when he was doing that.
Of course not. But I mean, this has been his pattern. As you said, attack, rally the base against your enemies, and the base is still holding firm at around 35–40%. Just attack. First, he goes after the press. That's been from the beginning. I've said here, the press it has some culpability in this. They've taken the bait too often. But now he's going after his own senators in a caucus where he only has a 2-vote majority.
Yeah.
He's going after his own senators. What does he expect to get done on difficult legislation? I don't think this is about policy making anymore. I don't think he gives a rat's whatever about the policies and what it gets done. He's out there yesterday talking about tax reform, serious issue. What are people talking about today? They're talking about his attacks on the press, his insults of Bob Corker. Yeah. Nobody's talking about his agenda because he's not talking about it.
So it's not focused whatsoever. I do want to bring up something before we leave kind of Washington conversation about executive orders that you were pretty angry about this week and compared it to the use of President Obama's use of executive orders.
And President Bush.
And what President Trump is attempting to do here now with health care.
This is an unconstitutional way to govern. The Constitution sets up separations of power, and it sets up a process for enacting laws. And what the last 3 presidents have done to the extreme is use their executive orders, use their agency rulemaking to, in effect, make law and bypass the Congress. That's not a representative republic anymore. That resembles more of a dictatorship. And the problem with it is, as we've seen with DACA and the Clean Power Plan and other things, an executive order can be undone by the next president. An agency rule can be rewritten by the next administration. There's no permanency, no certainty to our policies.
Can this ever be an effective decision-making tool, though?
But, well, I mean, for starters, I don't think it's unconstitutional. I mean, the Constitution gives, Article 2 gives the president a lot of leeway over the cabinet, over the departments that they oversee.
But not
executive orders. Executive orders date back to George Washington. Okay, every president has indulged on that front in many ways.
Not to make laws.
Also remember that the Emancipation Proclamation is an executive order. It's always been somewhat controversial. The last 3 presidents are doing it more frequently than other presidents.
In a different way, Steve.
And they are doing it in a slightly different way. And I think it risks policy instability, as you point out, that you yo-yo back and forth, right?
But the difference
Between
here,
one another.
they're using it to enact policies that Congress has already rejected or refused to act on. In this case, in terms of Trump on the health care changes, Congress has defeated that now.
Yes.
2 or 3 times. The president can't act.
Can't just do it.
You can't bypass Congress. That's violates separation of powers.
I think it's a bad policy, but I mean, you go back again to the Emancipation Proclamation. That could not have been passed. The Congress at the time. That's why Lincoln did it.
And I understand that. But these are laws that require spending, require budget decisions, and the Constitution specifically forbids that.
In theory, I agree with you. I think it's bad policy. I don't know that they're violating the Constitution. They are certainly stretching the limits there.
All right. Well, let's.